Hello, everybody. This is my older adult oral presentation on Erikson's Stage 6, Intimacy versus Isolation. I chose to focus on this stage because this stage stuck out to me because whether it's a friendship or a boyfriend, I've had issues in this area, getting close to people or letting people get close to me. I've had issues with, being vulnerable and just companionship in general. So for me, this stage is important. So that's why I chose to do research on it and discuss it. So during this stage, young adults are looking for intimacy and closeness in their relationships. And those relationships can be with anybody. It doesn't just have to be with a significant other. It could be with family, or it could be with friends, colleagues, co-workers, whomever the person may be seeking a relationship with. Individuals in this stage also focus on forming close relationships with others. During this stage, individuals learn to give and take with their significant others without sacrificing their identities. So this stage, people learn that they can still be true to themselves while also being true and in a partnership with another person. In this stage, if an individual is unable to establish intimacy, they are at risk for isolation. There are a lot of factors that play into isolation, and I will get to that in the next few slides. So my interviewee was my grandmother. And some important experiences that she told me was her experience with my grandfather. I don't know my grandfather. I recently learned his name and where he was a couple of months ago. He's been absent from my mother's life. He lives in Virginia and he has a wife and other children of his own. So my grandmother said their relationship was, rocky. He didn't really do what he was supposed to do as a father. He wasn't faithful to my grandmother, disappointed her on several different occasions, and he actually just kind of ran off, and then one day she just never seen him again. He left with no explanation or nothing. My grandmother had a close relationship with her parents, who have passed away. My great grandmother in particular, she was like the glue that held the family together. She had a very good relationship with her mother. They spent a lot of time together and did a lot of things together. My great grandmother was, in my grandmother's household, she was a disciplinary. She made sure everybody was okay. She took care of everybody. Anything anyone needed, she was there. So she was kind of like the rock. My great grandfather, he kind of, had my great grandmother's back. Whatever she said or whatever she wanted done, that's basically how it was done. He provided for my grandma and her siblings. My grandmother said that her parents displayed love and affection in front of her. They never argued in front of her, and they kind of set the stage for how a man should treat a woman and vice versa. She said that's how she learned, the roles of a man in a relationship, the roles of the woman in a relationship. The woman, cook, clean, take care of the house. The man, he work, fix things around the house. She said they never argued in front of her, and she knew that they had issues and they didn't always get along, but she never really seen that. Based off that experience, my grandmother couldn't really understand why she got with someone like my grandfather. She says that she think it was his charm because the way that he treated her and how she kept going back to him was not how her parents showed her, how relationships should go between two people who love each other. Some difficult challenges and accomplishments in this stage my grandmother faced, and she still faces them today. So right now my grandmother is not married or dating anyone, so it's hard for her to go from, I to we, meaning that it's hard for her to have someone close to her, and put herself in a situation where it's no longer just about her, but now it's about her and another person. She also went through a stage where she blamed other men for my grandfather's mistakes, and those men had to kind of put up with her having up a wall and her kind of playing the man role because she didn't want to be vulnerable, because she didn't want to get hurt again. She had no closure from my grandfather because, like I said, he just kind of disappeared. And to this day, he didn't say anything. He doesn't reach out to us. She hasn't heard from him. My grandmother also said another thing that was difficult for her was communication. She said that she ended up having poor communication skills with her spouses because she was afraid to say something that would upset the spouse or make the spouse want to leave her or start an argument. She doesn't like confrontation, so she kind of kept things bottled up inside of her, and then she exploded when an argument or something happened. Another difficulty that she faced was insecurity. My grandfather was her first love, quote unquote, and it kind of made her feel like insecure, like something was wrong with her, for him to just get up and just leave one day and never come back and not say anything. My grandmother was also involved in a car accident, and her leg was hurt in the accident, and due to her leg being hurt, she had to have some surgeries and multiple hospital visits, and so she was insecure about the way that her leg looked, so she stopped going to social events and hanging out with friends, things of that nature. She also went through a stage where she said she compared herself to other females. My grandmother is of darker skin, and back in those days, it was, if you were lighter skinned, then that was the best thing on earth. But she kind of compared herself to the long hair, light skinned girls that she wasn't. As the years went on, my grandmother said some accomplishments was she actually learned to love herself. She worked on her self-worth, her self-care, which boosted her self-confidence and helped her, to move on and just be confident within herself. She also learned to stop blaming other men and people for the mistakes that my grandfather made, because, just because he made those mistakes or treated her a certain way, everyone is not going to treat you that way. She also had to be honest with herself and figure out, why she felt like she had to blame other men, or why, he left. And she had to tell herself, his decisions had nothing to do with her. His decisions were his decisions, and, it's nothing that she did wrong, but that was on him. So the psychosocial crisis resolutions. In stage 6, the psychosocial crisis is not being able to establish intimacy, and ultimately ending up alone. To me, vulnerability is a huge component needed for relationships to be successful. A person in crisis at this stage doesn't know how to give and take in a relationship, and they may even sacrifice who they are for their spouse. So people in this stage, they want to be with somebody so bad that they're willing to just not even, do what they like or express their beliefs just so they can be with that person and just to make it work. And that is not a good idea. So the inability to achieve intimacy results in painful feelings of isolation and self-absorption, as well as lack of feelings of love. Individuals who fail to achieve intimacy may be fearful of losing their sense of identity by becoming intimate with others. Some of the psychosocial factors that were stated during the interview were, my grandmother said she was sort of a loner, but she was able to get along with everyone. She didn't have a lot of friends, but everybody liked her, if that makes sense. She does have, close friends from childhood that she remains friends with to this day. I believe it's 2 women in particular that she has a really good relationship with, and they were friends since children. She described her childhood as good. She stated growing up was different for her because she and her friends, they actually, went outside and did things. They went to the park. They played, kickball, things like that outside. And these days, kids don't do that, especially females in particular. They're in such a rush to grow up so quickly that, they're going to parties and wear makeup and things like that. Another big thing that she pointed out was they did not have social media when she was a child, which made things so much easier, and bullying was just non-existent. People didn't bully people or make people feel bad about themselves. She said as a child, she had good health. During her adulthood, as I stated earlier, she was involved in a car accident that led to a leg injury. And due to that injury, she said she stayed away from a lot of activities because she was insecure about the appearance of her leg. Mental illness, such as depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia, does run in our family. However, my grandmother said that she didn't suffer from mental illness. She said she had the normal sadness after a breakup or anxiety before she took a test or something, but she didn't admit to anything like depression or schizophrenia for her. My grandmother did say that racism existed when she was a child, but my great grandmother kept her sheltered for most of it. And then, as I said earlier, being darker skinned female was difficult for her when she was growing up because, you had to be lighter skinned and things like that. So my grandmother was raised in a time where they live by the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. Literally everyone in, her neighborhood looked out for each other. Like if you did something wrong, the neighbor would discipline you and take you to your mom. The teacher disciplined you. If a family was struggling, they didn't have heat, hot water, anything was going on, they would pull together and help out the families in need. As I stated earlier, my great grandmother was the head of household and she did discipline, and my grandfather was kind of the one who gave her whatever she wanted. My grandmother did well in school. Teachers favored her and they loved her. My grandmother grew up heavily in the church. They went to church faithfully every Sunday. She was in Bible study, Sunday school. Till this day, she continues to go to church every Sunday, and throughout the week. One thing that I noticed about my family dynamic when my great grandmother passed away, it really hindered and changed the relationships within our family. Like people stopped talking to each other. People started being greedy and try to, take my grandmother's house from people. It was just a big old mess. It was like she held our family together, and she was the glue. And when she was gone, people just kind of didn't know what to do. So the other theory that I chose to focus on that I think, in my opinion, relates to intimacy versus isolation is the attachment theory. Attachment theory is defined as a relationship or bond between an infant and his or her caregivers. Attachment particularly focuses on the relationship with the mother. Attachment and intimacy are related because if a person does not have secure attachment, their ability to be intimate becomes extremely difficult, and 9 times out of 10, they end up alone. Parent-child relationships and intimacy. So the relationship that we all experience first is the one between our mom and our dad. So the relationship between a child and their mother in early childhood is extremely important for future relationships. The attachment between the child and their mother becomes an internal working model. So if that child sees that their mother is, feeding them, bathing them, clothing them, getting them ready for school, doing their hair, just showing love and affection, that child will model what they see in other relationships with other people. A child raised in reliable and loving circumstances is likely to see others as available and responsive.